Welcome back to another episode of What is MMO, a series where we take a look at brand new upcoming MMOs and discuss not only the pros, but also the cons of every title on the horizon, while simultaneously exploring whether or not we should be eagerly anticipating the game. Today, we are going to be discussing Tower of Fantasy, a cross-platform sci-fi anime MMORPG from Hotta Studio that many players have claimed looks and feels a lot like Genshin Impact, if Genshin Impact were an MMO. And while there are some people out there that genuinely, for whatever reason, think that Genshin is, it really isn't. Now, if you want to stay up to date with all these upcoming MMO releases, scroll down, hit that subscribe button, and follow our new What is MMO series. So, I am quite the avid anime fan. I have watched hundreds of anime series over the years, with some of my favorites consisting of Code Geass, Cowboy Bebop, Death Note, and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Big Brother Ed.
And now that you have all relived what is arguably one of the most disturbing scenes in the entire history of both anime and manga, we can continue. Tower of Fantasy is right up my alley. This is an anime MMO that genuinely looks and feels like an anime game. The graphical aesthetic looks and feels absolutely fantastic. The environments are all large and filled with personality. The character models look like they were ripped right out of an anime series. Speaking of, this wouldn't really be an MMO without layers of customization, right? Well, Tower of Fantasy offers quite a sizable number of customization options when creating your character, more than most anime MMOs actually do. I've found that anime games offer some of the least creative character choices out of any subgenre, yet anime series themselves are so creative in the stories that they tell. It is such a bizarre contrast. The world is bright and vibrant, your abilities are all flashy and impactful, albeit not everyone will appreciate that, as some complaints that I've heard about Final Fantasy XIV and even Black Desert Online is that there are just too many effects going on at any given time, and that not only obscures some of the gameplay, which in turn inhibits your ability to actively see what is going on, but it can at times also be very overwhelming, and I get it. But speaking of abilities and effects, I guess that is going to lead me into the combat. The combat in Tower of Fantasy is 100% action. You're required to aim your abilities entirely and are given no aim assistance from what I've seen personally. Granted, I haven't seen every class in action, but I've seen enough weapon types actively engaging enemies that it would be weird to have one or two that don't. There are a significant number of different weapons, each with their own unique combat style, strengths, and weaknesses available for players. The world itself is large with plenty to see and plenty to explore. The game provides environmental interaction, which isn't really something that is typically seen within the MMO genre. As an example here, there are plenty of games out there, the Assassin's Creed games, Immortals Phoenix Rising, Breath of the Wild, even Genshin Impact. These are games that provide you a lot of world interaction, whereas normal MMOs, they just don't. You move pretty much horizontally across the world. Occasionally you'll encounter a game that allows for flying mounts, but that's the only way to essentially get higher in terms of terrain level. Now, players in Tower of Fantasy are capable of climbing any wall, any cliff or mountain. They can scale objects both large and small to reach areas that you wouldn't otherwise be capable of reaching. This provides a new sense of depth to not only the exploration aspect of the game, but also to the utilizing of terrain to your advantage both within PvE encounters and PvP. While I'm uncertain to the degree that dungeons and/or raids are going to be available, the PvP is something that, while they haven't touched on verbally, they have shown off in 2 separate trailers thus far. Utilizing terrain to your advantage is going to be a crucial part of gaining the upper hand over your opponents and ultimately assuring victory. And given the type of combat that we've seen, players with good reflexes and a good sense of their environment are going to flourish. There are plans to provide a variety of different methods of transportation, either when the game inevitably launches or somewhere down the development line, with promises of things like hoverboards, jetpacks, and various different types of land and aerial mounts to earn and obtain, and probably buy as well. well. There appears to also be a type of narrative present that is going to propel you through the game. It is only in Chinese presently, so it's difficult to really ascertain any type of meaningful information from it. Speaking of the language, Tower of Fantasy is a Chinese MMO. This might turn some of you away due to the fact that they're typically known to either be pay to win or heavy on the grind. However, Korean MMOs are equally, if not even more, pay to win, and they are some of the most popular games in the world. Again, as the game is only in Chinese, we can be certain that the game will be a little ways off releasing outside of its country of origin. There is no scheduled release date for Tower of Fantasy right at this moment, but it is expected somewhere in 2022. It's doubtful that we will be capable of playing this without at least a translation and possibly a VPN, but I'm hopeful that we will get the game sometime soon nonetheless. It's also worth noting that there was a beta test that took place recently. However, there are no upcoming beta tests planned on the horizon. Tower of Fantasy has a gorgeous anime-inspired world. It has some smooth, impactful looking combat animations. Being cross-platform compatible means that the player base has the potential to be several times larger than it otherwise would have been if it were a PC exclusive. There's also plenty of customization, both in terms of your physical appearance and your combat style in game. However, I haven't seen much in terms of build customization. Since it is going to be cross-platform compatible, it means that mechanically, the game might be limited as it will have to function on mobile devices as well. World PvP is definitely not for everyone, and while I'm not saying that open world PvP is going to be a thing, because again, open world PvP wasn't really confirmed or discussed really, as a matter of fact, the trailers did make it look as though there was the potential for non-instanced PvP. Maybe that just means duels, I don't know. This is a Chinese MMO, which leaves the potential for pay to win. This game is still at least a year off releasing as well, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to get access to future beta tests. Ultimately, Tower of Fantasy has been one of my most anticipated MMOs for the last year. It looks gorgeous and it plays incredibly well. You can customize some seriously sick looking anime characters in game, and the combat looks like a whole lot of fun. The only competition Tower of Fantasy will likely have to deal with is Blue Protocol, but Blue Protocol is going to be a PC exclusive, or if Bandai Namco decide to, will be a PC and console cross-platform MMO, so I highly doubt they're necessarily going to invade one another's player bases. At the end of the day, this is what Genshin Impact could have been if it were an MMO, like we were all hoping it was.
Someday soon, I'm gonna make